I had the pleasure of speaking with Amy Jordan today on the Family Brand podcast. She is incredible and her journey is so meaningful and inspiring. She talks about her journey navigating. She owns Pilates studios, 11 of them, soon to be 12, across the US. And how did she survive COVID, when they all had to shut down? And she also got diagnosed with cancer during the middle of it all. And she's an inventor, talks about some of her inventions and also her journey in co-parenting, which is a conversation that I've been wanting to have more of those types of conversations and questions on the podcast. And so, and at the end, she talks about how you can do Pilates. She has resources for you, even if you don't live by one of her studios, and talks about the benefits of Pilates, which I've been wanting to explore more. It's something I didn't realize. She talks about the benefits, not just for your body, but for your mind as well. And how Pilates does both. So check out this conversation. It's amazing.
Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family.
Welcome to this week of the Family Brand podcast. I have Amy Jordan with me today. Hi, Amy.
Hey, how are you, Melissa?
I'm awesome. I've had multiple people that have told me you have to have Amy on the podcast. So I am so excited to get some of that Amy magic that I've been hearing about and talk with you today.
I like to say I'm not made of magic. I'm made of passion. It's a little bit cheesy, but it's true because I throw my whole heart into whatever it is that I am working on.
Awesome. So let's dive in. We have a lot of talking points today, kind of a varied conversation where we're going to take this, but let's just dive in. Will you tell us a little bit about who is Amy Jordan?
Sure, absolutely. I am first and foremost a mother of 2. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'm also an inventor and a master of movement. So I lead and have founded WundaBar Pilates. So that's a nationwide network of Pilates studios. And I also invented the machine that we work on in our studios called a WundaFormer. It's like a Swiss Army knife of Pilates machines where we have a jump board, a ballet bar, a reformer, and a Wunda chair all in one. So that has been, just a really amazing project and just a passion project for me. I left entertainment to dive into Pilates because I felt so sincerely just called to really serve people in movement and help them thrive in their own skin. And I also battled and beat cancer during the pandemic. So the studios were closed. I was, fighting for my life quite literally. Kids from homeschool. It was a really, really challenging experience. And then coming out of that, I realized how much when I was working with people online, teaching people online movement, that I wanted to get my hands on them to adjust their form and help them get the most out of their work. And it's impossible, of course, digitally screen to screen. So then I created the Wunda Core Resistance Ring. And that is my latest invention that we just launched about a year ago. And what that does is it replaces a trainer's hands or a Pilates teacher's hands while you're doing movement to get the best result, the best alignment to help you really thrive in whatever it is you're doing.
Okay, that's so cool. There's so many things I want to talk about, and we will. Let's maybe start with you left the entertainment industry to pursue this. What did that journey look like? And it sounds like it was a big leap.
It really was. And I mean, total like exit stage left, right? So I was an entertainment marketing executive. My last job that I held at one of the main studios was as the senior vice president of marketing for Marvel, like a dream job by so many people's standards. I loved it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the actual function of the job. However, I didn't feel like I was giving back in a way that I really wanted to. I wanted to give back more into the world and serve others in a way that I didn't feel like marketing films or products supporting films was allowing me to do. And so during that time, I was also going through a divorce and it just didn't feel it didn't feel great at that moment. It was a difficult time in my life. And I also knew that I wanted to do something more. So I stumbled into a Pilates class. It was one of these experiences that helped me feel centered, grounded, going inward instead of worrying what was happening outside of my life. And I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to help others with movement, with Pilates specifically. And so I started um, taking the steps to train to be a Pilates teacher, and also to then eventually, within about a year and a half, maybe at the most, open my own studio, my first studio in my hometown. And then it's just really snowballed from there. I was consulting in entertainment because you always have the jitters of, is this going to work? I had never been an entrepreneur. And so I was still consulting to make sure I had income coming in, but it allowed me to then go full time and lean all the way into helping others feel amazing in their own skin.
That's so cool. Yeah, my entrepreneur journey has been so interesting. And I feel like you learn so much that you maybe wouldn't otherwise, like a lot about yourself, actually. At least that's been my experience. What would you say has been your biggest takeaway or lessons learned as you've entered an entrepreneurial journey, if you could distill it into something?
I would definitely say a big one is resilience, because you're going to get knocked down. Things aren't going to go the way you planned, whether it's a single promotion or whether it's an actual, product launch, or, something that's completely out of your control, like the pandemic and your business is being shut down. And the more resilience and the more belief that you have in yourself, and continuing to take action steps to move forward, little steps, little steps, little steps, stacking one on top of each other, is going to help you grow in ways that you never anticipated or couldn't have even dreamed of. If you're willing to pick yourself back up, as long as you're in that arena, like Brene Brown says, if you're in the arena, if you're face down in the arena, at least you're in the arena, you're trying, you're doing your part instead of watching from the sidelines.
Which is so hard to do. I know sometimes it feels like, again, just my entrepreneur journey, sometimes it feels like, am I even winning? Like, am I doing anything right? But you're right. You are in the game or in the arena. And that's like half the time the most important thing.
It's true. And it's such an important thing as mothers to model to our children, to model to them that you can fail, you can, have things out of your control, push things out of whack, push your life, push your goals, push your work out of whack. But just the same, if you keep trying, keep believing in yourself and do work that matters to you, then it's not going to feel like quite as difficult as it would be if it's something that wasn't really aligned with your purpose.
And I love what you're saying about what that it's not just for you, but as you said, as a mother, that models something for your kids as well, which is just as important, I think.
It's so valuable to teach them that. And as an entrepreneur, you can teach them to lean into their purpose instead of fitting into a box and fitting into a career or a path that we in our generation might have been pushed into a little bit more. And now I really value the fact that they have been able to see and had a front row seat to creating things, inventing things in service of others, and also in service of my kids too, because it's allowed me the freedom to spend time with them, to be there when they come home from school and not have to be at a physical workplace all the time. Of course, I'm at the studios, multiple days a week, but I can do it in the time windows that work for me and that serve my time with my kids.
So let's rewind just a minute. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, did you have physical locations and studios at that time?
We did. We had 11 at that time, and they were all closed because we operate primarily in LA County and in New York City. And so those two areas were just shut down for essentially a year. And then it was even still a slog getting out of it after that, because then it was masks and then it was vaccine mandates. And it was all of these things that created a lot of hurdles for us to get back into business. And so often people look at a success story like WundaBar and they think, oh, Well, of course, it was just a straight line and, oh, they
Mhm.
got lucky and, this, that, and the other. But the fact of the matter is, things that get glassed over pretty easily are that we closed multiple studios during COVID because it was a way to triage some of the bleeding that was happening when we weren't able to generate any revenue. And so I think it's always really valuable to take a realistic look about things that did not go the way we want. My heart broke. Like I get emotional even thinking about it. There were 3 studios that closed during COVID, some of which were under my general scope of participation. One was in New York. It was our first New York location in Soho. And one was in Calabasas, which is not that far from my home. And I personally participated in the closure of like physically moving things out, physically teaching some of the last few classes. And it was a really difficult thing to do, but it was a resiliency item again, where you had to do the hard thing in order to let everything else still grow and survive. And we're back up to 11 studios again. Took us a little bit because it was not an easy thing to come out of, but we are back up to 11 studios with the 12th in development. Right.
That's so incredible. I commend you. We have a friend in with the fitness industry, and I think it was last year we were talking to them about how they're still recovering from the effects of that. How and maybe you've already spoke to this, but actually, how did you do that? Like, how did you weather that for so long?
It was just such a massive team effort, right? And we had to rely upon the relationships that we had established with many of our landlords who were willing to forgive some of the rent that we owed, who were able to build out payment plans where we paid things back for a couple of years. This was large sums of money,
Wow.
and just really do our best to um, keep our team leads. And so part of that was with a business partner who helped to support some of the payroll that we needed to cover. Cause we also have, there's a misconception that, oh, you got the PPP. And so you were fine. Like, no, that covered like not even a month of what our expenses actually are. And so we had to get creative and we had to then rely on the teamwork from the people that we were able to keep on payroll. And they were doing things that was not a part of their normal job. So, for example, keeping the machines maintained. If you're a regional director, that is not in your normal
Mhm.
job description. But it was really everyone rolling up their sleeves and saying, like, this is so just out of left field. None of us knew what to expect. But it's having the kind of culture where they know that I would do the same and have done the same. I've scoured toilets in new studios that are opening. At the time, I was teaching live sessions with not one hair on my head because I valued movement so much. Even in a time of a health crisis, it was critically important for all of us to put everything we had into that arena so that we could weather it and come out the other side. But it took a lot of doing, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I failed to remember for a minute there that you're also simultaneously having your own health challenges. That's incredible that what you've done. So cool.
It felt a little bit like a Job moment, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But we got through it, and I got through it with the incredible humans surrounding me and supporting me. They called themselves Amy's Angels at the time, and it was just this tribe of long-term friendships and even new friendships that just really came around and rallied around and supported me and my kids and the businesses as well to make everything survive, myself included, during a really, really dark and difficult chapter in life.
I have one more question about that chapter, if you don't mind me asking, because I'm sure it was or I imagine it's a chapter that changed you. Do you feel like having cancer, do you feel like what did that change for you as far as perspective or as far as like the before cancer Amy and the after cancer Amy?
There's for sure like a very strong marker in my timeline of before and after. So I will say 2 things changed pretty dramatically. I was introduced to the idea of caterpillar soup while I was battling this because we all have this notion that a caterpillar crawls into its little cocoon, it makes its little cocoon, and then it emerges and it's a butterfly with these beautiful wings. When the fact of the matter is they're disintegrating. They're in our form, we would feel a lot of pain if that was happening. It's dark, it's solitary, and there's no known ending. There's no awareness of what comes next. And
Wow.
it's only when you get through it that then you have wings, then you're flying, and then you can see the brightness of the future. But understanding that concept of caterpillar soup when I was in the throes of these moments helped me understand like it's on the other side and it's meant to be dark, scary, alone, disintegrating, painful. And that's that soup that then I could understand the wings come in a minute. We've got to wait for that. Second takeaway is that the depth of battle that I had to go through. I went through 90 hours of chemo. I went through 25 days of radiation. I had a radical hysterectomy, countless side effect hospital stays, just things that you're not really prepared for. It's like, all right, radiation, chemo, surgery, tick, tick, tick. I'll do those things. And then you get all of these curveballs. And I had like an additional surgery even at the end, just for scar tissue.
Wow.
And what my takeaway from that whole really harrowing experience is the filter. So I now have a filter. And if what is looking for my attention, positive or negative, if it does not pass through the filter of the battle I went through to be in this time today, to be in the after portion of Amy after battling cancer, then it's a no-go. I'm not going to give it any attention. I'm not going to spend any time on it. Everything goes through this filter that I've heard. I met an astronaut once at a bed and breakfast, and they said that their worldview changed dramatically when they were in outer space looking back at the Earth. And that resonated with me. I was a woman in my mid-20s probably when I heard that story. And it really struck me as like such a pivotal perspective shift. And battling cancer and truly, genuinely battling for my life for several months on end just gives me a filter where I don't waste energy and time on things that don't serve me or my family.
And is it just a matter of you just are more in tune with like what does and doesn't? Or is it a series of like questions that you run like if this filter?
No, I'm an artist at the heart of it all. So I'm not like a spreadsheet list checker kind of a person, but I feel what I feel. You can feel your central nervous system getting dysregulated. You can feel when your heart is racing up, when your, shoulders are lifting and you're just feeling agitated and short-tempered. And that's a really great indicator of, oh, something's out of whack here. Something's out of alignment. And I want to take a better look at how I'm spending my time. Why am I engaging in this activity or with this conversation that is creating this internal response? And how can I protect my peace, protect my family, protect myself, protect my business from this kind of upset and agitation? How can I set a better moat and a better protection around myself and those that I love?
That's such valuable advice, I think, for any person, any human, especially one that has, children that's parents, is like your time can be so limited. Because, if you are running a business and you are running kids to practices, you don't have time or space for those things that don't fit. But it's easy to just operate just by
It's
default.
really easy. It's really easy. And I did it for years where I would allow myself to get, upset by a certain circumstance or whether it's personal or professional. And I've gotten to the point where it's like water off the duck's back. I just am like, huh. It's more taking a stance of like observing it versus getting into the muck of what might be upsetting. Like, oh gosh, that didn't go right. What's next? How can we make it better? How can we improve it? Or how can we just, if it's possible, how can we just no longer participate in that activity with that conversation and remove yourself from it if you can, but otherwise, how can I improve upon it and show up better for myself, my team, my kids?
That's so good. What would you so I wanna shift to talk about Pilates a little bit. I think I've only taken a Pilates class once or twice. I used to live in Hawaii for a time, and it was in
Yeah.
Hawaii where I took my Pilates class, and it was, like, such a beautiful class, and it was on a reformer, and I loved it. The place where I live now, I don't have access to, like, in-person classes. I just live in a small community. But I love the idea of Pilates. What do you love about Pilates, and why should people do Pilates?
That's a beautiful question, and I love it so much. So, Pilates comes from the idea that everything is controlled or moves from center. So even when we're moving our left arm, I'm stabilizing with my right waistline and my left hip. So everything comes from this center out. And I like that concept in life too, right? If you're grounded and you're centered, and then you can grow and move successfully outbound from a strong, rooted center. It also, the practice involves a lot of breath, which then helps us to show it better for ourselves and in life, right? So Pilates is such a challenging and mindful practice. It's not passive, where I find work like yoga can be kind of passive in my experience. It's challenging, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking yoga, but you're holding for a long time in poses where Pilates is more in movement and flow. And so you get a lot of there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of intention behind it. So it also quiets your mind in a way that I don't find other exercise modalities do, because you can kind of go through the reps at the gym, or you're, doing your triceps, or you're doing whatever it is you're doing at a gym experience. It's loud, it's noisy, there's lots of chaos going around typically. And you can kind of just phone in those bicep curls or whatever it is you're doing. When you're in Pilates, it's a head to toe experience in every move, and it creates so much focus that it quiets everything else except serving your movement, serving your health, serving your wellness. And from personal experience, going through a health crisis with cancer, every single doctor that I encountered, whether it's a holistic doctor like a chiropractor or an oncologist, every single one of them, their assessment was, you are battling this as successfully as you are because you came into it from such a strong and healthful, grounded place. And I think that that's just a valuable thing to give, a gift to give to ourselves for mindset and health and mobility. But then in the event that there's a healing crisis, you're at the, like, you're giving yourself best shot to get through what you need to get through.
I don't think I've ever considered that Pilates is also, and it's not just physical benefits that you're reaping, that it's also those mental, emotional benefits as well.
Absolutely. At first, when I started teaching Pilates, I didn't understand. You'd see people yawn in the first like 5 minutes of class. Not everyone, but several clients would be yawning. And of course, you always look at yourself like, oh my God, I'm so boring. What is going on? And then only after more study and more training did I understand that it is an outward signal of your central nervous system downtraining, calming, and it's a sign of feeling safe. So if you're allowing yourself to yawn and be calm and peaceful, then it's showing outwardly that you feel safe in the environment that you're in. And that's something that I think is incredibly valuable about the way we do it at WundaBar Pilates. This is not a space where you're going to be hearing about bikini bodies. You're going to be hearing about any sort of outward in nonsense. Everything we talk about is inward out. And we really welcome and include everyone wherever they are on their fitness journey.
That's so beautiful and so necessary. I think it's easy to get caught up in, like you said, just the bikini bodies. Is that what you said?
Yeah, bikini body. Yeah, sure. I mean, especially when I first started in this industry, in 2008 was when I opened my first studio. There was so much of that noise. There was even a beach body, group that was, their name said it. And there was constantly like, it's bikini season, it's tank top season, weight loss challenge, biggest loser. All of these things were so loud in that space. And they're still loud, but they're less loud than they used to be. And we've just always been an industry disruptor in that way of, no, we're here to serve you exactly where you're at. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what the number on the scale says. I care that you are thriving in your skin. I care that you're improving from where you were yesterday, and that you feel really empowered and strong when you walk out of this room. And I'm serving you how you're delivered out into the world in a way that you can't do in other approaches. And I do teach a live class. I'm going to send you the link, but I teach a live class every week. And it's an experience where we work out together. All you need is the floor. You don't need a machine. And we work out together every week for about 35, 40 minutes. And then there's an opportunity to ask me questions like, hey, my knee cracks, and it kind of groans when I go into a squat. or my hip always hurts when I do this, or I can't raise my arm up above this high. And so then I'm coaching in real time the questions that come up on the calls. And it's been such a valuable little community that we're building. And it's just a great way to connect with people outside of the studio walls.
That's amazing. And your approach is so refreshing. And I was going to ask you, is there a way if you don't live close to a studio that they connect to this? And it sounds like there's. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to wundaondemand.com, so that's WUNDA on demand.com, we have options from, where you can just access the recorded videos, you can access the live calls with me on a weekly basis. We've done retreats. We did a retreat in Greece last year, which was spectacular this time last year. And then we do often use the Wunda Core Resistance Ring because that is, like I said earlier, a way to make sure you're aligning and getting the most out of the moves. And in November of this year, 2024, we are launching 7 new products. So this is our galaxy color that you can see here on the video. It's like sparkly and fabulous. But we're launching like 3 new colorways. So it's like a soft blue, very rich purple, and then an off-white, and then also some mats and resistance loops so that we can be using our Wunda Core tool as well as the resistance loops to get even more connection head to toe. So, and I have a new invention coming in January, but you didn't hear it here.
That's amazing. I love that you're just creating these things out in the world. Does it feel scary or does it just feel exciting?
A little bit of both, right? I tend to believe that you're asleep at the wheel if you're not scared at all when you're launching something new. But I'm also an artist and a free spirit human being. So I'm also just going to keep leaning into creating what I know will serve. So I love doing it. And it's also something that I'm modeling for my children. They've helped me carve and sculpt literally with a bread knife, things that, Barbies and clay. This first version of this Wunda Core Resistance Ring is about this big. And it was made out of clay to fit my daughter's Barbie to see like, oh, does this actually make sense? So it's something that they get to, kind of participate in with me. They go to the focus groups with me. And so they're seeing how this impacts, how these ideas that you can come up with at home and work out together then can impact others' lives positively. While I'm just thinking about it for that live class, if your audience wants to DM me the words family brand, then we will send you a link to test or to try that free class with me. It's normally a paid subscription, but we'll give you a link to test out the class for free and give it a shot and see if it's a good fit for you. We do it typically on a weekday, but sometimes on Saturdays. And we can send that link and then you would have access to the recording too.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I'll make sure for anyone listening that we'll connect everything, drop the links in the show notes so they can find you easily on Instagram. I'm imagining to DM you on Instagram.
Yes. So you can DM at Amy Jordan Official, or you can DM at Wunda Core, because that would be another great one, or at WundaBar Pilates. Any of those, my team knows what to do when they get that link.
Okay, awesome. In our last couple of minutes here, before we started recording, we were just kind of talking, and I realized that Amy brings to this conversation something else that I want to have more conversations about on the Family Brand podcast, which is her journey in co-parenting. Amy mentioned before we started recording, that she is very proud of the relationship that she has created with her kid's dad and the co-parenting that they do. And I would just love to hear more about that and what maybe some successes and just any advice you might have for another family who is doing that as well.
Sure thing. And I'll express to your audience what we were saying, that when we connected on Instagram and we were talking about me joining your show, I had a moment of hesitancy thinking like, oh, family brand, this means the typical nuclear family, 2 parents or a mom and a dad and the children. And I am divorced. And so the idea of putting myself onto a show like Family Brand was kind of like, I don't know, does Melissa know? Should I tell her ahead of time? Because it's silly, but you kind of put this like, shame might be a little bit harsh of a word, but you put this kind of like, well, I'm not a part of that club. I'm not a part of that group because my family looks different. And I will agree with what you just said, that it is a strong relationship and a new, different relationship you have to build with the other parent of your children, so that you can work together to keep the children the focus. And that's our greatest success and our biggest win, because we have arguments. Of course we do. You have arguments with any adult that's close to you in your life. And certainly when the stakes are really high,
Mhm.
the stakes are high. These are our children, our most precious little children. And when we disagree on things, or when we have, concerns over financial matters or doing divorce settlements, these are really high stakes conversations. These are really emotionally charged conversations. And one of our greatest successes is that we are able to step away from the table, step away from the argument, recommit and recenter to these two children are at the heart of every decision. And the rest of it is optional. The rest of it is, malleable. The rest of it, we can figure it out as long as we focus on showing up in our highest and best for these two kids. And that's our guiding force in any decision we have to make.
And do you feel like if and when there are those situations where maybe you're not seeing eye to eye, has maybe repeating that to each other you found to be effective, or what other tools have you found have been helpful?
I find that owning my part of the argument, or owning my part of the disagreement, has been a really valuable way for us to move forward. And then I've also then seen my kid's dad kind of reflect that back to me, where
Mhm.
like, hey, I was really sharp. Sorry about what I said. And we'll literally verbally say, or via text if we need a little space, we will say, I've returned my focus to what I think is going to serve the children the best.
Mhm.
And we also, something that is easier said than done, have intentionally committed to no text battles. Those get out of hand real fast. And I think that's a really important part of how our communication has been. And we have the ability to say, like, hey, I can't respond right now. I can't. I
Mhm.
just need a minute. I need a minute. I say that with my kids too. Mommy needs a minute. Right. So I think that it's valuable to step away from the table when things get heated, because the stakes are too high. Your children and their experience and their sense of safety, they're learning about relationships. They're learning about how conflict is resolved is crucial, even when you're not in the same house anymore.
I love that I was able to ask you these questions, that you shared so honestly and openly about your experience. I think there's going to be a lot of families that are going to hear this and be inspired by you. Not just this part of the podcast and these conversations, but your whole journey that we've been exploring today, and your resiliency and just your creativity as an inventor and a business owner. Is there before we go, any final thoughts or words you'd have to share with us?
I think it's so important for all of us as parents, and I'll speak specifically to you and I as moms, to make sure that we are really modeling what we want our children to see. Because it's so easy, myself included. This is something I am learning too. It is so important to, if we want them to love their work and not hate this grind of their work, that we're modeling work that we love and work that we're passionate about. If we want them and hope and wish and pray for them to have healthy relationships with friends and family and romantic partners, that we are modeling that to the best of our ability. Because I'm telling you, I put a post on my Instagram story yesterday. It was my daughter's 11th birthday.
Oh.
And it's a little poem. I don't know the author, or I would give them credit, but the poem, the gist of it is, mothering you is mothering me.
Hmm.
And I think that's such a valuable way to look. Excuse me. It's so meaningful. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's a valuable way to look at how we are parenting and how we are mothering when our children challenge us, right? It happens every day. They challenge us, we get frustrated. But if you look at the heart of it, what we're frustrated about is the areas that we probably need some healing on, that we probably need to reflect and work on in our own selves. And they're like our little mirrors helping us to grow. So I would encourage you to remember that, and for us to keep that in mind as we grow as a parent and as a family.
That's amazing and beautiful. I've loved learning from you today. Thank you. I'll make sure and drop all those links in the show notes so people can connect with you and get the magic of Amy in their lives too. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Melissa. It was great to chat with you.
Thanks for hanging out with us today on the Family Brand Podcast. But wait, before you go, I want to give you something. It's something I stole out of our Family Brand Academy because I thought it would make a big difference for you, and I want you to have it for free, no strings attached. It's how we run our family meetings, and not just our family meetings that we have every week, but also our family check-ins, which is the system we've developed for how to connect with our kids and each other, Chris and I, every single week. And we've had some great outcomes with this. Not only have we, but a lot of families that have implemented this have as well. Actually, life-changing outcomes, if I'm being honest. You'll definitely want to get this. Go get your copy at familybrand.com/meeting, and we will catch you next time.